Greatly appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak with you tonight. Before I get started, I'd really like to thank all of you that are here, because for anybody that's not thrown their hat in this ring, for anybody that's not been involved at the county level, or anybody that's not gotten involved in the political arena, I mean, your friends may think that this is a Tuesday out of every month for you, but this is a lot more than that. This is long evenings, long weekends, and this is a commitment. And normally what you're doing is you're out there walking the streets, you're out there, whether it's doing phone banks, and you're contacting people, and sometimes you're not getting the warmest of receptions. And traditionally you've gotten involved, not because you've been ecstatic with the way things are going, but because you perhaps were a little bit unhappy. So, you know, I want to give you some encouragement to keep doing what you're doing, because you jumped into this to make a difference, and you're doing that. You're making a difference. So greatly appreciate all of your efforts. So, again, many thanks. You know, as our last meeting broke in November, we'd had about 4 governor candidates, we had about 4 senator candidates, and they had all stepped in, and they'd gotten about 10, 15 minutes to speak and introduce themselves. And after that meeting, I went up to Brian and I asked him, I said, Brian, I said, now, at the next meeting in January, it's just going to be myself and Mike. We spent about an hour and a half tonight introducing candidates. I assume that Mike and I are going to get about 40 to 45 minutes each, since there's only 2 of us. Well, Brian had made it very clear that, Dan, you'll get about 10 minutes. But the good news is that I did get some strategies from my friend Jim McGinnis. And he says, Dan, don't worry about that 10 minutes. If you need more, you just take it. And if you need to take that mic, it's mobile. And if you keep walking around the room, they won't catch you. So when I was thinking about what message to deliver to this group, and thinking about, you know, what do I want to share with you, I was kind of reflecting back on the times that I was where you're at today. And we had perhaps a special speaker come in, or a guest speaker, or a candidate, or a politician. And as I sat there, maybe once or twice in the last 4 years, it might have crossed my mind that an abbreviated version of everything that they were delivering would have been more than sufficient. So I decided what I was going to do was give you an abbreviated version tonight. And I think most of you already know me, or a lot of you know me, so it may be very appropriate that we shorten this up, and Brian has indicated that I've only got 10 minutes. So for those of you that don't know me, I do come from the business community. I am not today, nor will I ever be, a career politician. And I think that's a pretty doggone good thing. But I spent my entire adult career has been spent in the business technology industry. And within that career, I've had the pleasure and the opportunity of working alongside and calling on and selling to some of the biggest organizations in America. I've worked with Wells Fargo. I've worked with Walmart on a corporate basis. I've worked with ADP. But at the end of the day, that's where my career has been spent, is in business technology. I got involved with the DCRP about 4 or 5 years ago. I now serve on the State Central Committee. I've got 5 wonderful children. I've got 3 tremendous grandkids. And about 29 years ago, as a matter of fact, 29 years this May 31st, I will celebrate my 29th wedding anniversary to my wife, Sally. For any of you that have met Sally, you will come to the very quick conclusion that I married way over my head. I won't argue that tonight. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that is true. As a matter of fact, Sally and I met when she was very young. We were high school sweethearts. I convinced her I had a lot of potential. She bought it, and she's very patient. 29 years later, she's still waiting. So I share that with you. I share a little bit of my personal life with you because I want you to understand one thing. The purpose of me pursuing this office in this political arena is not for political, professional, or financial gain. I would be much better served, and I would be much better off to stay exactly where I'm at, and in about 10 to 12 years, ride off into retirement and enjoy the time with my family. And I'd be very passionate about that. I serve because I seek to serve because I'm concerned about the direction that this country is headed. I am very concerned about what's coming out of Washington. So I seek to go to Washington with a servant's heart. So as we look at this, I've been a conservative all of my life, and I've been true and loyal to those conservative values and principles. But what we're starting to see coming out of Washington is an indication that there are some within the conservative Republican Party that seem to be having an identity crisis. And friends, that's creating a crisis of credibility. And I would make the case tonight, that it's time to stop sending career politicians to Washington that campaign as conservatives, and forget those conservative principles once they get to Washington. We are now $17.3 trillion in debt. Think about that. $17.3 trillion in debt. Unfortunately, those in Washington don't seem to understand that we've got a spending problem. On a daily basis, our personal liberties and our freedoms are being eroded, and very few in Washington are doing anything about it. And I'm not cynical by nature, and I know that there are some in this group tonight that will not be very receptive to my message. And there are some in this group tonight that will be very receptive to this message. But I can tell you, I no longer listen to what the politicians in Washington say. I no longer listen to what my congressman says. Instead, if I'm going to be a fair observer of what they're doing, I watch how they vote. I watch how they vote. Because when you listen to what they say, it's quite interesting when you compare it to how they vote. And let me give you an idea. This is information, and this is campaign material coming from Congressman Terry's campaign. And this dates back over several election cycles. U.S. Representative Lee Terry is a leader when it comes to the fight over spending. Very simply, the federal government's spending and borrowing too much. We're in agreement. Another election cycle. Lee Terry believes the federal government spends too much, taxes too much, and is carrying too much debt. And Lee is the only candidate who will continue to oppose wasteful spending and fight to lower our debt. Lee Terry has always opposed wasteful spending. It's Nebraska common sense. Lee Terry is leading the fight to set real priorities in Washington and stop spending our children's future. Friends, I take this one very personal. I'd shared with you that I've got 3 grandchildren. Each one of those grandchildren right now are carrying a debt burden of $55,000 as their share of the national debt. My 4-year-old granddaughter has no idea where she's coming up with $55,000. It's news to her. And then last but not least, Lee Terry has voted to terminate the Troubled Asset Relief Program known as TARP and use the remaining funds to reduce the national debt. Congressman would not have had to vote to terminate TARP had he not voted to pass TARP. Friends, at some point in time, what you say on the campaign trail has got to reconcile with what you deliver once you get to Washington. Again, if you watch how the congressmen and the politicians vote, it tells you far more than if you listen to what they say. You cannot continue to run as a fiscal conservative and vote for big government legislation like TARP, cash for clunkers, bailout after bailout, debt ceiling increase after the debt ceiling increase. Some of you may remember on April 26, 2011, Congressman Terry was our guest speaker that night. The hot topic of the night, and the topic being most discussed, was a pending debt ceiling increase. And Congressman Terry had made it very clear, as the members of the DCRP had made it very clear to him, Congressman, when you get back to Washington, we want you to stand fast. We want you to be true to the conservative principles on which you ran. We want you to fight spending. We do not want the debt ceiling increased. Congressman's response was, I've already spoken to John Boehner, and I told the Speaker, don't count on me to pass this legislation. Do not count on my vote. I'm not inclined to vote for it. You're going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I took the opportunity. I asked him, I said, Congressman, we're concerned you're going to waver. Can you please tell us what that rabbit looks like? The congressman had made the commitment. He says, I will not vote to pass that debt ceiling increase unless it comes along with a Paul Ryan budget, not to be confused with the Ryan Murray budget, the Paul Ryan budget, or a balanced budget amendment. Now, I've got to tell you, I thought we were making progress. I was good with that. It was progress. Unfortunately, just a few short months later, the congressman voted for the Balanced Budget Control, or for the Budget Control Act in August of 2011. It increased the debt ceiling, it gave us the failed supercommittee, and it gave us a sequester. Friends, at some point in time, what you say on the campaign trail has got to reconcile with what you deliver when you get to Washington. It's got to happen. The most recent Ryan Murray budget, there's nothing conservative about that legislation. It increased taxes, it increased spending, it increased the debt, and it cut the benefits of the veterans, the very people that we have a sacred oath with in this country. It cut their retirement benefits. There's nothing conservative about that, and you cannot continue to run as a fiscal conservative and pass that type of legislation, friends. You can't. So I ask you, and this is a question that I wrestled with when I considered throwing my hat in the ring, is how many years do we wait? How many years do we continue to do the same thing and expect a different result? Is it 4, 6, 8, 14, 16? How many years? The very definition of insanity is to continue to do what you've always done and expect a different result. I have no reason to believe that we're going to get a different result in year 17 and 18, and that's why I've thrown my hat in the ring. I have no doubt that the congressman has gone and done what he has believed has been a noble job. He has committed to fighting the debt and fighting federal spending since the day he's gotten to Washington. In 1999, when he first arrived in Washington, the federal budget that he runs on and campaigns to reduce was about $1.7 trillion. After 16 years of fighting for all he's worth, it's now about 3.5, 3.6. The national debt, when he got there, was about 5.6 trillion. 16 years later, 17.3. Friends, what I'm asking you to do is jump on board with change. It's time to send a strong, unwavering voice to Washington that'll stand on the conservative principles that we have campaigned on. And I'm asking for your help. I will be that conservative voice. I will not waver. You will not have to call me the night before legislation is going to pass or be voted on to determine whether or not I'm going to stand by the conservative principles on which I campaign. As a matter of fact, when Speaker Boehner calls me and he says, Dan, I need your help, I need your support. I know it doesn't feel right. I know that there's a few tax increases. It increases the debt a little bit. It won't be a no. It'll be a resounding no. It'll be not on my watch, it's not going to happen. And not only that, but I will use the bully pulpit that comes with this office to rally my colleagues to stand on the conservative principles that they were elected on. Friends, each one of these offices, each one of these seats comes with a bully pulpit. It's time to start using it. And again, you do not need to call me the night before. As a matter of fact, if you do, you'll probably get a busy signal because I will be on the phone with my colleagues making sure that we're passing conservative legislation. So again, I know that this message is not received by everyone here tonight warmly, and I know that there are others that receive it very well. But I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for your support to jump on board with this campaign, and let's together start to change Washington. Let's together make a difference. So I greatly appreciate any help and support. Scott, you've got the pen, the pencil, the sign-up sheet. We are going to sign up an army. When the gentleman you're running against has $820,000, you take any help you can get. As a matter of fact, when I'm done speaking here, I'm going to the lobby, and I'm going to keep speaking. And then once they've heard me, I'm headed over to the Ramada Inn, and I'm going to keep speaking. But friends, seriously, I hope you'll join the campaign. I hope you'll jump on board. We need your help. We need your support. And together, just like you've done here locally, nationally, we're going to make a difference. Thank you very much.